there is a brand for every color under the sun, and you can make any color work for any industry. So I'd rather have the person be attracted or attached to their brand rather than the other way around. And that personality and like that uniqueness really is absolutely 100% catered to each individual.
Welcome to another episode of Personal Brand Blueprint. I am Dave Polykoff, your friendly neighborhood personal brand consultant. If you are struggling with finding the personal brand story, message, and translating that into content that attracts, convinces, and converts your ideal client online, then check out davepolykoff.com to find ways to work with me on a one-on-one consultation. In fact, you can book a free consultation by going to davepolykoff.com. On today's episode, we have Jorge Medina, co-founder of Easybranding.io, a tool that I use and love, which we'll talk about today. And today we're chatting with Jorge about how we can use the power of visual identity to stand out and position ourselves in the market so that we can create scroll-stopping content and grow and monetize our personal brand. So Jorge, welcome to the show.
Hello, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we have a little bit of a backstory. We've actually connected through LinkedIn, and we started kind of engaging on each other's content, and then realized that we have a lot in common in terms of like our passion for branding and personal branding and visual identity. And kind of since then, we realized, all right, I need to get you on the show to talk through this all. So let's start with the idea of, what do you do, and what is Easybranding, and what value does Easybranding provide to, coaches, consultants, and those who want to grow their personal brand?
So I usually often describe Easybranding sort of like a version of Canva where every single template is already adjusted or automatically adapted to the branding decisions that each user takes. So it's very pretty much plug and play. You come into the platform, you select one of the templates, you just focus on writing the content rather than having to drag around any design elements to create the template. So everything is ready to go, and you can just focus on the content. And that makes it very efficient, time efficient for anybody that's doing content. You know how very difficult it is to put out content constantly, and starting from scratch each post is absolutely exhausting. So having everything ready with templates that are branded, ready to go, it's much easier.
And so it sounds like what Easybranding solving is that kind of not reinventing the wheel every time you need to go create a new post, or Canva is great in the sense of it provides you templates and the tools to like create content, but it's very dispersed. What I loved about Easybranding is like it takes all the templates, all the banner images, everything that you need to support your personal brand, your visual identity, and just goes, here, these are all the things that you need, and puts it right front and center. And then the beautiful part on top of that is the ability to craft a visual identity, colors and objects and elements and such, so that you can stand out. And that's something I know you work on, not just within Easybranding, the tool, but also from like a services standpoint, is helping people craft their unique identities. Talk to us a little bit about that. What specifically do you provide personal brands when it comes to like custom visual identity services?
Yeah, so the idea is that Easybranding allows that streamlined and scalable branded asset generation. But of course, we cannot cater to absolutely all of the uniqueness out there. So, but the platform allows for any branding to work within the system. And that's where, in a way, I'm like solving the problem that I faced many times as a designer, which is that I go with my clients and we design together a super unique and great identity. But because they don't know design, once I hand off the identity, even if I create templates on Canva or any other system, it's sort of very easy to mess up. So this is the bridge that helps us as me as a designer to create a very complex and as wonderful as needed identity without any limitation as to what the client might be able to execute on their end. And then I hand off everything through Easybranding so that they cannot mess it up, basically, which is a common pain point for a lot of brand designers. I'm sure many can relate. And therefore also the client has or eliminates the cost of having to have a designer constantly on board or at hand that is able to work with the brand guidelines if they are very complex to execute. So
And so who's like a typical user of Easy Branding or someone that would come to you for a visual identity? What's kind of the demo or the role that they have that would make the most sense to use your services?
So most commonly, I'm right now working with any kind of entrepreneur or content creator that doesn't know design, because they have to keep outputting content to gain awareness and grow an audience that can eventually purchase their products. So this is a very well-packaged solution that they can rely on to just focus on what they do best, which is communicating their expertise rather than having to be constantly tinkering with design tools. But I've also, and this sort of, it's something that comes with the new version of Easybranding, but it is very useful also for B2B companies that might not have a designer on board, and their marketing teams, usually they are very crafty and they know how to sort of use Canva, but to keep a brand really consistent across the board, um, it's very hard when there are like many stakeholders working with the brand guidelines. So for B2B companies, smaller ones without designers in-house, Easybranding is a really good solution because we set out all of the brand decisions with the colors typography, and we can customize the templates as much as they need. And then the marketing team just needs to write the content on the templates rather than tinker with the elements and stuff. So those are my two main targets at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I love what it's solving there in terms of like if you've ever gone bowling, you can put like the bumpers on either side of the lanes so that when you bowl,
Yeah.
like you're guaranteed to hit some pins. Like these are like the bowling bumpers to basically be like removing the friction and the decision fatigue and the technical know-how of creating branded content. Canva, as you
Exactly.
say, kind of does that to a degree, but this is like even more kind of bumpers on the side there. But let's start with like concept of visual identity. I mean, it's becoming more and more prevalent in the world of personal branding as everyone treats themselves as a business, and we're creating kind of like our personal brand guides, similar to how a typical small mom and pop shop would create their brand guide. But what's the importance of having a unique visual identity within personal branding?
I mean, I love that you bring up the mom and shop, uh, um, mom
Mom and
and
pop.
pop shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is exactly that. Like we now live in like an international and global world. You wouldn't expect anybody walking down the street to stop by a blank or a black storefront with no products or anything that will indicate whether you are interested in what they are offering or not. That would be very unusual. And the same thing is happening now on the feeds where the amount of content is so overwhelming that without a distinct visual identity that represents what you're doing and who you are, it is very difficult for you to stop people from scrolling and actually pay attention to what you're saying, which is ultimately the point. But without a unique visual identity, it's very hard to do that, right? So the thing is, I've been writing about this, and I'm careful about how I do it with because I don't want to lean into fear mongering. But the reality is that personal branding, whether you're looking to be an entrepreneur, build your own business, or whether you're building a corporate career, um, it's soon not going to be an option because There are some statistics from LinkedIn that even for HR people, they are resorting to directly go into your LinkedIn rather than even checking your CV. So if your LinkedIn is your storefront, and then they're going to find that default empty banner and empty face picture without a description, without any real thought put into it. What can you really expect for them to really spark some interest and get and be and want to work with you and engage, right? And the same thing goes with any prospective client. Even if you're writing very interesting content, and when they go to your LinkedIn page or your website, and what they find is something very amateurish and not well put together, it's the same thing as going into an interview wearing your pajamas or any other non-appropriate clothing, right? So that's a bit of the perspective that I'm constantly talking about, and how important it is to have a personal brand.
Hey, Blueprint fam, if you're enjoying today's episode and finding my guest insights valuable, then you'll definitely want to subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast, as we drop weekly guest interview episodes just like this one. And on that note, you obviously also see firsthand how powerful being an effective guest, like the one you're watching on this episode right now, can be at attracting qualified, interested leads directly into your sales funnel. But I know what you're thinking. You want to get into guest podcasting, but starting feels confusing and overwhelming. What equipment do you need? And how do you look and sound great? And how do you turn listeners into leads? I know this because so many of my guests had these exact problems in the past. And that is why I created the Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint. It's a simple but powerful breakdown on everything you need to look, sound, and convert great as a podcast guest. Everything from how to set up your recording area to what equipment you need to look and sound great on camera, and what to say on podcasts to stand out, be memorable, and earn the audience's trust. And then that one key strategy to turn listeners into leads. I'm telling you, this isn't just another checklist. This is a step-by-step blueprint to make sure you look, sound, and present your best on podcasts so you can convert that attention into leads and ultimately new business. I honestly was thinking about selling this for like $97, but I'd rather give access to this guide to my Personal Brand Blueprint podcast audience for free. So if you are ready to become a sought-after podcast guest and use it to generate leads and build your personal brand, and grab your copy of Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint at davepoly.com/podguestblueprint. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. Again, that's davepoly.com/podguestblueprint, and start turning podcast interviews into business. Again, it's completely free for being a loyal listener, so definitely check it out. Cool? All right, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I love that concept of the storefront. I have kind of thought about similar metaphors in the sense of you might be hungry and you go to a pizza shop, and there's maybe two pizza shops right next to each other, and one is all boarded up and it just says on the front, it says pizza shop. And the one next to it has like a glass window where you can see into the pizza shop. You can see how the sauce is being made. You can see how the dough is being spun. And on the front, it has like a branded name with, testimonials on the front and all that kind of stuff. And which pizza shop are you going to choose? Obviously the second one. And that's, to your point, that's your LinkedIn profile, is like your storefront. How do you promote yourself and differentiate yourself? So I love that idea. Let's talk about now. Sounds like you have a healthy background in design, visual identity, and you've kind of found yourself in almost like a SaaS product, a technological product. Walk us through the origin story of how you launched Easybranding, and then how you got translated some of these services into a tech product.
Well, actually, I come from product management, and and I was building like an AI product before this, and I was in advertising technology before that. And when I decided to go into entrepreneurship, I knew from the start that I really wanted to do founder-led marketing and lead every communication effort through my own personal brand, and build on the story of why I was building what I was building and how I was going through the process, because I'm really into building authentic personal brands. And I know that authenticity is like a very it's too used now. It seems it's like a buzzword that has completely lost meaning, but it really is all about authenticity. And I do think that I really do that, and actually found myself found the idea of easy branding precisely because I was sharing my journey. So before easy branding, I was building a different product, an AI thing, but because I was being so consistent with my own personal brand, the small audience that I was growing kept asking me about first if I had a designer, because I was fitting the profile of a tech entrepreneur rather than a designer as I was building an AI product. And it was how I was doing the design and how I kept it being so consistent and so prolific because I was posting a lot of content and all of it was very on brand. And what I was doing basically was applying the design system thinking, which is used a lot in product design and UI design, and applying it to brand design. So it's sort of mixing the creativity of branding with the systemization of building a scalable product. And but to me it was so obvious, like the efficiencies of it was so obvious that I thought that for sure that somebody else was doing it. And after some research, I realized that it wasn't the case, so much so that Easy Branding as a domain was actually free to use. And then that's how I found the product. And I went in with my co-founder, and like we built the MVP in about a month and a half, and immediately after the launch on Product Hunt, where we got actual product number one product of the day, we sort of found product market fit because people were buying into the product and they really loved the idea of it, and that's how we found the product market fit and how I found my way into easy branding.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like such a common story for the sake of like the founder solved their own problem, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. And so like product market fit is really just like anyone who's having my problem, which I know, I'm sure you knew like everyone is. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
Canva solves it slightly, but really there's like a niche issue that you're really solving there. Yeah, so it's much easier to find product market fit when you know I have the problem. I'm not just guessing if the problem exists. Um, so we were, you said there that you were kind of creating content for yourself and trying to grow your own personal brand. While you were building Easy Branding, while you're trying to kind of promote yourself as a thought leader, what were some of the marketing tactics and strategies, or maybe even one specifically that stood out as being a marketing strategy that provided the most ROI or the most kind of moved the needle the most for your personal brand?
Well, without wanting to repeat myself, but it was actually true authenticity. I actually really struggled at the beginning, as anybody really. I think this is the biggest issue that we all have with authenticity, and it's the aspect of vulnerability. And I made it a really important point on my communication strategy that I was being very transparent about everything that I was doing, and I was sharing not only the wins but also the failures and sharing all of my learnings along the way. And I'm 100% sure that without it, I wouldn't have had the support I did, for example, when I launched the product and I got that number one product of the day on Product Hunt. Um, because I really think that people felt like they truly knew me and I wasn't putting any sort of facade. I was truly just sharing all of the insecurities about starting building a product online, not really knowing. Like I had all of my design and product background, but when you go into entrepreneurship, as I'm sure you know, it's like a bazillion handling, juggling a bazillion things at once, and it's quite honestly very overwhelming, and you don't know what you're doing. You doubt yourself, you doubt your ideas, you doubt everything that you do, but you have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing through. And through this journey, there are a lot of like happy moments and there is a lot of frustration. And so I made a point to really share that authentically. And then also, which is a bit of why I'm building Easybranding, but the visuals really helped because people really felt attracted or like it really helped me stand out. I very quickly became like the yellow guy on the very small niche that I was growing. And people kept telling me that as soon as something yellow showed up, they immediately thought of me, even if it wasn't my content, which was great. And that's really top of mind, which is what you always want to achieve when you're trying to do any marketing stuff. So yeah, it's like that duality of the having a good visual identity and pairing it with valuable and authentic content, which I mean, it's what everybody knows, right? But it really does work. And actually, um, throughout these learnings, that's also why I'm really passionate about why I'm building Easybranding, because I know that most people don't have the design skills to have that pairing. But I know there are a lot of people that are not only that have not only incredibly valuable voices, but they are really genuinely good people. And I sort of coming from the formerly Twitter space where there is like a lot of raw content and salesy, very not genuine people trying to make business. I grew tired of seeing how these people with deception and very weird tactics get all of the impressions, and basically anybody with actual expertise and value to add and good people that want to do good business don't even have a chance to stand out. So I really see Easybranding now as a way to empower those actual creators and business owners that really want to do good by the world and make a profit out of it, because we are all trying to make a living, right? But it's sort of, I think Easybranding levels the playing field so that they actually get a chance at success that it's not available right now. And that really empowers me as a founder, because I really believe in what I'm building, and it's not just to make money, you know.
Hey, Blueprint fam, if you're enjoying today's episode and finding my guest insights valuable, then you'll definitely want to subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast, as we drop weekly guest interview episodes just like this one. And on that note, you obviously also see firsthand how powerful being an effective guest, like the one you're watching on this episode right now, can be at attracting qualified, interested leads directly into your sales funnel. But I know what you're thinking. You want to get into guest podcasting, but starting feels confusing and overwhelming. What equipment do you need? And how do you look and sound great? And how do you turn listeners into leads? I know this because so many of my guests had these exact problems in the past. And that is why I created the Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint. It's a simple but powerful breakdown on everything you need to look, sound, and convert great as a podcast guest. Everything from how to set up your recording area to what equipment you need to look and sound great on camera, and what to say on podcasts to stand out, be memorable, and earn the audience's trust. And then that one key strategy to turn listeners into leads. I'm telling you, this isn't just another checklist. This is a step-by-step blueprint to make sure you look, sound, and present your best on podcasts so you can convert that attention into leads and ultimately new business. I honestly was thinking about selling this for like $97, but I'd rather give access to this guide to my Personal Brand Blueprint podcast audience for free. So if you are ready to become a sought-after podcast guest and use it to generate leads and build your personal brand, and grab your copy of Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint at davepoly.com/podguest blueprint. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. Again, that's davepoly.com/podguest blueprint, and start turning podcast interviews into business. Again, it's completely free for being a loyal listener, so definitely check it out. Cool? All right, let's get back to the conversation. To summarize, it feels like you're kind of like democratizing the visual aspect of personal branding, where in the beginning, or maybe even just a year ago, unless if you're a designer or you hired a designer to create templates, no one else was really doing that. So as long as you looked professional and like you had sexy designs, you stood out on LinkedIn. And so you were getting a lot of attention, regardless of the value. You're getting more
Exactly.
attention because you had just like these professional looking designs. But now with personal branding growing, with tools like Easybranding, you're democratizing that. You're making it so that regardless of who you are, what resources you have, you can still show up with just as sexy of visuals to capture that attention. And there's something interesting you said earlier too was you were posting so consistently with your visual identity that you kind of became the yellow guy
Mhm.
because that was your visual identity was that yellow color. Walk us through when you're working with a client to create their visual identity. What are some of the things that you're looking at to decide on, okay, what's going to be like their shtick that they're going to be known for?
Well, I really make an effort to, I think personal brands need to be personal and they need to be representative of the person that's behind the brand. So I have like the first step in the service is to go through a questionnaire that has a lot of questions regarding like the target, the market, the product, whatever it is that they are doing or selling. But then we go into a call and I really try to get personal with them and understand what they like and what they don't. I think it's quite the default route in marketing to think of branding directly from the perspective of what will work for a specific market. Although obviously having that in mind is interesting and it can work. I think it is much more powerful for a personal brand to be rooted again in authenticity, in something that feels real to the person that's going to yield that personal brand. Um, Not only because it enhances the authenticity of their voice, but also because when you're doing personal like content on the daily, you're gonna be even if you're doing using the tool like Easybranding and it's easy to use, you're going to be seeing your own content 24/7, and it has to be something that you actually like and that you feel proud of and you feel like it represents you. So I always try to find that unique aspect that really speaks about the person that's behind the brand. And with colors, for example, I don't know, I don't go so much about the psychology of color and what works with for which industry, but I always try to go into what that person actually likes because let's be real, a lot like there's a brand for every color under the sun and you can make any color work for any industry. So I'd rather have the person be attracted or attached to their brand rather than the other way around. um I mean, and that personality and like that uniqueness really is absolutely 100% catered to each individual. Like I've done brands, and I've got one that I really like for a leadership coach. That's all. It looks like sort of like a sort of it's inspired on national parks branding, and it's like he's a ranger that guides their clients through nature. Inspired metaphors because that's what he does with his content and that's what the visuals and probably when I show it to him at the beginning he was not expecting that at all because that wasn't the idea of an identity that he had for a coach. But it makes his identity that much more unique and it's going to help him cut through the noise rather than blend into all of the coach like identities. And then he loves it and that's sort of it really it's not a cut through process because each individual identity is unique. So but that's just an example of one.
We've talked about the importance of visual identities and now kind of like how some are being conceptualized, but where are we or where should we apply these visual identities? I mean, the internet's a really big place. Where should we be prioritizing implementing these visual identities? And then maybe you can kind of correlate that to what easybranding.io provides you as the resource.
I mean, I think we should apply the identity to any brand touch point because at any given space or moment that a client interacts with our brand, it's an opportunity for us to solidify and sort of make our way into their memory. And the visuals make a great work at making that easier, because we are like 60% more prone to remember things that we see rather than things that we hear or that we read. And that's a very clear way to use the subconscious to our advantage. And that's everything from an email signature to the LinkedIn banner, all of our posting on social media, even if we are doing like workshop and we use slides, all of those, eventually, obviously a website, all of those are brand touch points in which we relate, we have like a connection with our users or our prospects. And so that's why, and talking about easy branding, once you make all of the branding decisions and you pick up your colors and the typography and the design style and all of that, you have all of those templates available. We have all of the social media banners, a plethora of social media templates, whether it's square, portrait, story. We have presentation slides, email banners, signature, sorry. And we are going to keep expanding. Like eventually we're actually going to make actual websites within Easybranding and so on and so on, even video. I mean, everything is a brand touch point, right? So if you have a great brand and the ease to implement it throughout all of your brand touch points, you definitely should. And that's why what we're trying to democratize, because doing all of that is very, very hard, especially for someone who doesn't know design.
And I know we've talked about kind of the importance of having a visual identity, but can you maybe speak to like instances or just the idea of not having a consistent visual identity? Maybe it's with across your channels, maybe it's just within your content, kind of every piece of content is showing up and it's a different design style or whatever. What are some of the like the detriments or problems of not investing into a visual identity?
I mean, it's that ease of building memorability and having people easily associate what you do in an instant. Like what I was referring to with people seeing yellow and automatically thinking of me, that's the power of personal branding. And if I wasn't consistent with my colors and my typography, I could very easily sort of be ignored on the feed because, again, the amount of content is overwhelming. So if you don't build that familiarity, you won't have that concept of the top of mind that I was referring to before. That's often talked on in marketing, which is that whenever your clients or prospects see, for in my case, yellow, or they see a content that speaks about personal branding or design principles, I have a much higher chance of being in like their top 10 when they're thinking of that topic. And that's the key to actually converting clients because realistically, not everybody, I mean, most of the people that read your content won't be ready to purchase when they see your content. That's not how branding works or marketing works. But when the time needs, if you are consistently in that top of mind, it's when they will reach out directly because they trust you. And that familiarity builds trust. And bringing it back to your example of the mom and pop shop, it's if you go through the street and you keep seeing that pizza shop that looks enticing, it's appetizing, and you might not be in the mood for pizza, but eventually when you are, you will think of that shop specifically and be like, okay, now it's the time to try that pizza. And you will obviously completely ignore the boarded up pizzeria that you don't know anything about, right?
Mm. If someone's ready to invest into their visual identity, what should they typically have budgeted for some custom work, like utilizing someone like yourself?
Well, I mean, it depends on the stage of any business. I would say I don't think necessarily personal like branding needs to be exceedingly complicated for people to start. I think that's one of the biggest problems with people, that they overthink how perfect their identity needs to be for them to have one. I would encourage anybody, even if it's with something as simple as just picking a pair of fonts and a color, and to stick to that, even if the rest is just a simple background, anything, just those two choices will build towards that memorability. And that's basically free to do. Or like if you want to use Easybranding, which obviously enhances what you can do with a monthly subscription, that would be the equivalent like $15 to $20 a month, which is very affordable considering the alternative, which would be hiring a designer. And then if you want to go and you have a higher budget and you want to go and invest on something like a custom identity, then we'd be talking about, I mean, there are a plethora of services, obviously, right? But usually it goes from like 1,000 to 5K, or depending on who you hire, 10K or more. But I'd say the average is around 2.5 to 3, 4K usually in the US, of course.
Yeah, USD, not crypto or Bitcoin, even though that seems to be taking off right now. So if someone did want to learn more about you, your personal branding, visual identity services, and or Easybranding, what should they know about what you offer, and then where should they go first to kind of interact with you and figure out more information about you?
Yeah, so right now my main channel is LinkedIn, because that's where most of the B2B business is located, right? So it's just on LinkedIn at Jorge Medina Castillo, which is my full name. But they can also go directly and check easybranding.io, where everything is linked, and I have case studies to see identities that I've worked with, and anybody can try the app for free, by the way. So they can get started like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm also now very recently on Blue Sky, but I'm not really posting there. We'll see how that works. I
You
let
said
go
Blue
of
Sky?
X. Yeah, Blue Sky
Oh, okay.
is at thejorgemedina.com.
Love it. Let me
Do
check
you
that
use
out.
Blue Sky?
No, I've never heard of it. Is
No,
that
it's where everybody, it's like the substitution for X. Everybody's migrating from X to,
Blue
after
Sky?
all the Allen shenanigans. Um,
Oh, interesting.
everybody's migrating to Blue Sky, but
Oh,
it's very new, so I am still to figure it out. I've got enough with doing content for LinkedIn, to be honest.
yeah,
Two
right. Yeah,
channels
we're
is a
busy
lot.
enough. Add this to the mix now. Well, great. I love it. That's all for today's episode of Personal Brand Blueprint. A big thank you to Jorge for being on today's episode and teaching us the value of a visual identity for our personal brands to help us grow and monetize our personal brands. To learn more about how to launch, grow, and monetize your personal brand, you can subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast. Follow me, Dave Polykoff, on LinkedIn, as well as Jorge. And check out davepolykoff.com to see how we can work together on a one-on-one consultative basis. Links to all of that, plus Jorge's links, will be in the show notes below. Thank you, and see you on the next episode of Personal Brand Blueprint.
Thank you so much.
Today, we learned about my guest's origin story, unique methods, and credibility. If you want to see me break down how today's guest can use those tools within the Personal Brand Blueprint strategy to attract, convince, and convert new qualified leads so you can do the same for your business, then check out this episode here. Or if you want to continue to hear more incredible personal branding origin stories and learn more valuable personal branding skills from my awesome guests, then check out the full playlist of interviews here.